Next on Worcester News tonight, a human trafficking arrest in Worcester. The disturbing details we are learning tonight. Plus, an Assumption College swimmer's quick thinking and action helped save the life of a Massachusetts woman. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Olivia Lemon. We begin tonight in Worcester, where a man is accused of forcing a young teenage girl to live with him for weeks while sexually abusing her. He is now facing human trafficking charges. Our Catherine Andrioli has the details.
During the investigation, police obtained information that the 14-year-old female was originally from El Salvador and that she had struck up a friendship over Facebook with a 22-year-old male who was identified as Luis Santos.
A human trafficking case beginning on social media has ended in Worcester. Police arrested 22-year-old Luis Santos Monday. He's accused of paying to have a 14-year-old girl smuggled across the border from El Salvador.
At some point during these conversations, Mr. Santos arranged to pay somebody $5,000 to have the 14-year-old female victim smuggled into the United States across the border.
Worcester Public School officials contacted the district attorney's office on Friday after the teen, who had enrolled in school several weeks ago, had stopped regularly attending.
But he forced her to share a bed with him in that apartment. He also touched her sexually against her consent on more than one occasion.
A woman we spoke with who lives in the area says the charges are disturbing.
I can't believe it. I hate that this happens.
Police say the teen reached out to family friends from El Salvador and began staying with them in Worcester for the past week. Police say victims of human trafficking are often afraid to come forward.
Of course, in situations like this, the real problem is a lot of times the victims, they don't want to come forward, whether it's fear of reprisal by the suspect or fear of their legal status or lack thereof. So a lot of times they're afraid to go to authorities.
Santos faces a number of charges. He is expected to appear in court on Tuesday. Police say no one else has been charged at this time. In Worcester, Catherine Andrioli, Worcester News Tonight.
All right, Catherine, thank you. Now to Sturbridge. State police arrest 4 men on animal cruelty charges. A state trooper pulled over a vehicle early Sunday morning for not pulling over for an ambulance with its sirens on. When the trooper got to the vehicle, he heard animal noises and called for backup. Our Brittany Schaefer explains.
It's always shocking and sad whenever there's any sort of animal abuse going on.
4 men are arrested on animal cruelty charges Sunday in Sturbridge. State troopers found 3 injured roosters in a car they stopped.
This is something we take very seriously, with any type of animal cruelty, so that they'll be arraigned on Tuesday.
I'm really glad they were caught, and I really hope that like the law really enforces upon these 4 gentlemen that, well, I can't even call them gentlemen really, these 4 men.
Police say the roosters were found in plastic bags, had no feathers below their necks, and had gouges all over their bodies.
They do not do well with negative reinforcement at all. They're obviously defenseless. They can't do anything to stand up for themselves.
Sarah Gibson is the co-owner of Gibson Dairy Farm and owns roosters herself.
They're not fighting animals. So a lot of times, which is really sad, they'll poke and prod, they'll stab, which we heard about with, this specific case, to try to get the chickens aggravated and annoyed.
The 4 men were charged with animal cruelty and animal fight and conspiracy. Gibson says it's sad to know this still happens, especially so close to home.
As a farmer, we always try to take the best care of all of our animals, but certainly our chickens, because they give back. They are the best pets. They're great animals.
It's not something we see very often. Sometimes it almost shocks the senses when you see that it's still out there.
Brittany Schaefer, Worcester News Tonight.
An Assumption College swimmer used her years of training to help save the life of a Massachusetts woman. The champion swimmer says the rescue happened last week while the team was in Barbados. Tonight, she says she's thankful she was in the right place at the right time.
I just knew I needed to help her in some way.
Assumption College swimmer Rachel Lanham's quick thinking and actions may have saved the life of a Massachusetts woman in Barbados last week.
Her brother tried to help her, but it was just too much.
Lanham says she noticed the woman getting stuck in the undertow and struggling to swim to shore. The senior says she went over and grabbed her arm to pull her in.
I was getting fatigued, so I was trying to kick as fast as I can. to get us into shore and like push off the bottom.
Lanham was a lifeguard for 2 years in Florida, but says she never had to make a rescue like this. Without years of training, she says she isn't sure she would have been able to bring the woman to shore safely.
If we hadn't been swimming for as long as we have, it would have been way harder for us.
The Assumption women's swim team was in Barbados training over the winter break. Lanham says the rescue happened on the last day of their trip. She says she's thankful everything ended on a happy note.
I was happy I could have done what I did, and I'm thankful that everyone was okay.
Now, Lanham says the woman she helped was from the Cape, and she now has an open invite to go visit whenever she wants. A mix of optimism and some political concern was the tone of today's Martin Luther King Jr. breakfast in Worcester. It's one of the largest MLK Day gatherings in the city every year, and this one comes at a time when a new president will take office later this week. Our Andy Madison has a look at today's event.
We invoke this dream once more this day.
It was nice to come together and restore hope and remind ourselves that working together we can continue the dream.
Honoring the work and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. A diverse group of educators, politicians, and community members gathered together at Quinsigamond Community College in Worcester.
I've been coming here for 20 years in a row, and every year I believe in what Dr. King said. Longevity has its place.
The annual breakfast honored people for their work in the community. Gail Carberry has been the president of QCC for more than 10 years and is retiring later this year. Since becoming president, enrollment has increased 40%, and minority enrollment has gone up 12%. Today, she received a key to the city and the Eleanor Hawley Community Service Award.
She is truly a community leader. She does more than people would expect a college president to do. Her work goes beyond Worcester.
When you take a job in a city like Worcester, you hope that people will come together with you to make good things happen, and that is what has happened. And I think we have come to know each other pretty well and respect the work that's done across the board in the city.
Some touched on the current political climate with Friday's inauguration approaching. Congressman Jim McGovern has been highly critical of President-elect Donald Trump. He says he remains hopeful while also vowing to fight against any unfair legislation.
We will say no if there's any attempt to weaken the Voting Rights Act. We will say no if there is any attempt to roll back civil rights laws. We will say no to any Muslim registry.
They held hands to sing as a sign of unity. A diverse group bonding together while also hoping for peace and change and reflecting on what this day means.
It is very emotional for me. It's more than a job. It's a calling, it's a mission.
It's a call to action. We all have to make sure that the things that we believe in are followed through.
Andy Madison, Worcester News Tonight.
2 years ago today, Cafe Reyes opened its doors in Worcester. The restaurant says they believe the freedoms Martin Luther King Jr. spoke about are also their beliefs. Their goal is to provide freedom to men from the bonds of addiction and provide them with the job skills they need. Our Roslyn Flaherty was at Cafe Reyes today and has the story.
Jonathan Oliveira started working at Cafe Reyes almost 2 years ago. It was an opportunity he says he was thrilled to take.
That took my mind off of what was really going on.
Oliveira struggled with addiction before joining the Hector Reyes house. He says he hurt his back while playing soccer in school and was prescribed pills.
And I was on Percocets for a year, and then when it was time to come off, I didn't know what was going on with my body, and I started buying Percocets off the streets. And somebody introduced me to heroin, which was a lot cheaper.
Today, Oliveira is the general manager at Cafe Reyes. The Authentic Cuban Restaurant is a job training program for Latino men in recovery. Oliveira will be 2 years sober in April.
My mom doesn't have that hurt in her eyes no more. When I go home and see her, that's the best gift of my sobriety, is that glow in her eyes.
The cafe celebrated its 2-year anniversary Monday. The program says 70% of the men who have worked at the cafe have used the skills they learned to go on to other jobs.
They start with a stipend, a training program for up to about 200 hours, and then a number of them have chosen to be hired by the cafe.
Aaron Mendel is the volunteer executive director of the Latin American Health Alliance. He says they opened on Martin Luther King Day because Dr. King saw the world in a different way.
One of the great issues in men suffering from addiction is the stigma associated with addiction and the fact that they can't live like other people. And so our hopes are that they're able to develop the skills to carry on and be productive and be happy.
Oliveira says this program saved his life, and now he can be a mentor to others in the program.
I get to watch these guys come in broken, and week by week they turn into a smile. And I also, it's a double-edged sword because I also get to see, it's fresh in my memory what could happen to me if I don't keep doing what I'm doing.
Rosalind Flaherty, Worcester News Tonight.
Worcester is one step closer to building a fire history museum at Union Station. The Worcester Redevelopment Authority Board approved a memorandum understanding for the project last week. The WRA, who owns Union Station, is planning the museum with the Worcester Historical Fire Society. Mayor Joseph Petty says the fire museum has been in the works for several years and will be a nice addition to Union Station.
When it comes to the fire department, there's a lot of stories that can be told, and so it's going to be wonderful for the city of Worcester.
Now, there is no definitive timetable as to when the project will start.